I'm here to talk about how you can use Pilates to run stronger. Now, this is a bit of a whistle-stop tour because I could talk for hours on Pilates and running in combined, but you'll be pleased to know I'm going to keep it to half an hour. It is going to be an interactive session. That's my subtle way of telling you we are going to be standing up and trying a few exercises. And the reason being, I want you to be able to walk away from this session with some practical ideas and tips that you can take away, start doing tomorrow or next week in terms of your running and your running training. I'm going to start with what seems like a really obvious question, but I often get it followed with, is it the same as yoga? And I get it. There's a lot of crossover these days. I am a culprit myself. I use a lot of yoga moves or yoga-based moves. I don't want yogis to gasp in horror. I use a lot of yoga-based moves in my stretching and mobility. There's a lot of crossover these days, so it can get confusing. There is a fundamental difference in terms of where they've come from. So yoga its roots are based in spirituality. Pilates, the roots are based in physical and mental well-being. That's why Joseph Pilates eventually created the 34 moves, was to get people moving better and as a result, feeling better. Now, these days, there is a huge variety in terms of what Pilates looks like. And I think that's where it can get confusing as to what it was. Like I say, originally 34 moves, but that was for the general population. What we've got now is a huge variance that's been made specific for different demographics. So now you'll get things like pre and postnatal Pilates, and you get everything from elite sports teams and elite athletes using it. And it looks different for each of those demographics. And that's one of the beauties of Pilates, is it's so adaptable and you can make it your own. Which is why, if you want to sort of understand what Pilates is, I'd say Pilates classes generally are making you move better, feel better, and perform your best. Obviously, a postnatal mum is going to have a very different expectation of performance than an elite athlete, and that's where you get such variance in terms of the exercises and what the classes look like. So that's all great. What does it mean to run stronger, and how can we use Pilates to do that? And I think the first thing that often leaps to our minds as runners, particularly at an event like this, is running stronger means running faster. PBs, good for age, placings, all of that. And in that respect, Pilates has got you covered. There's a study in 2018 that showed that runners who introduced, recreational runners, not elite runners, recreational runners that introduced weekly Pilates sessions improved their 5K time, so decreased it. They improved their trunk strength and they improved their VO2 max. So really good benefits if you are thinking in terms of running stronger, looking like placings and things like that. I love a PB. My ego loves a PB. I definitely love it when I get placed in races. It's all fabulous. But it's not why I get out running. And I'm going to take a stab in the dark and suggest that there's quite a few of you out there who the thought of a PB is not what gets you out the door, particularly not on a cold January morning when you can't feel your fingers and toes. So when we think about running stronger, PBs are such a small, if you are doing them and you're doing them semi-regularly, there's such a small number of percentage of your runs. For me, minuscule. I mean, I can count them on one hand. So why are we getting out the door? Why are we starting to run? And I think this is where the real magic of Pilates can really enhance our running. Because I know I get out the door, and like I say, I suspect a lot of you do too, being outside, seeing our friends, mental health, physical fitness, getting away from my family, although if you follow me on social media, you know my husband runs, who sometimes comes with me. You can't win them all. But all of these things really, really important for our overall health and well-being, and nothing to do with being the fastest or getting placings. That's certainly why I run, particularly since perimenopause, when my mental health has been a little bit more sketchy. Running's become a really important hinge on which I control or manage, I guess is a better way, my mental health. And therefore, what does running stronger look like if that's more of your reason? Well, let's say, I want to enjoy every single run. I want to really enjoy it. It's part of my headspace. It's part of my time away from home. It's part of the way that I relax. So I really want to enjoy every single run. That to me is running stronger. I want to make sure that I'm getting more of that runner's high. I'm not talking about after you've finished a run. I'm talking about when you're running, when you're feeling like you're moving really well. You don't feel like the Tin Man, you feel really light, almost feels like you're flying and you feel that sense of freedom. I'm talking about running consistently. There is nothing more depressing as a runner than not being able to run. It's part of who you are, it's part of your identity, or it certainly is for me. And not being able to run is horrendous. And I'm sure there's a few of you that experienced that over the years. So it's part of your mental health. So running stronger means being able to get out there, or for all these myriad of reasons. It means being able to move well between runs. So I want to run stronger so that a few days after my run, I'm not still feeling it. That I can go out and do other activities and I'm not still thinking, Christ, I can still feel my calves burning. And I think it means longevity as well. I want to run stronger because I want to be able to run later into life. I want to make sure there's not a shelf life on my running. And to do that, I want to make sure I am running stronger now. So if we sort of use that more broader definition, I guess, of running stronger, we can have both the performance element and we can have this kind of wider view on running stronger. How does Pilates help? Well, there's lots of ways. Like I say, I could talk for hours on it, but I'm grouped it into 5 main ways, which I think will help to understand. Movement variety, strength, mobility, stability, and rest and recovery. So I'm going to take you through them and just really briefly give you some ideas of things to think about. Now, whether you use Pilates or not is entirely up to you, but there's other things you can do that will give you similar benefits. Like I say, I'm all about the Pilates because it's got the evidence. I've been doing it for about 15 years now. I've seen thousands of runners use it for their running. I've seen the difference it can make, but it's not for everyone. So what I would say is try and get some movement variety. Now, like I say, Pilates is fantastic for this, but running is, I'm going to state the obvious, it's really repetitive. It is using your muscles, your joints, your ligaments, your tendons in exactly the same way on repeat. And not only that, it's hugely high impact. So every time your foot hits the ground, your body is absorbing anywhere between 3 and 8 times your body weight. It's quite significant, well, significant for me. So you're using your body in exactly the same way under high impact. And that's what makes us so susceptible to overuse or overtraining injuries. So getting in some movement variety is going to help to alleviate some of that pressure on your joints and on your muscles. Using them in a different way is going to help you to deload and to hopefully prevent one of those overtraining injuries getting to you. Now, this is a sad statistic, but on average, 50% of runners get injured every single year. So if you look at your neighbour, there's a high chance one or other of you is going to be injured this year. Now, say a silent prayer that it's them and not you. I'm joking, sort of. But something you want to avoid, so what can you do? And I think it's actually helpful to know these statistics. I'm not telling you to scare you, I'm telling you because I think information is power. Because as soon as you know that, you can go, okay, what simple things can I do in order to try and prevent this? Simple things like looking at your day. What does your cross-training look like at the moment? I know a lot of runners like to cross-train with things like cycling and walking. I'm not suggesting don't do them, but they're very similar movement patterns, albeit without the impact. So have a look at your day, have a look at your week. What does your movement as a whole look like? And outside of running, just try and get some variety. So let's say running is all forwards, backwards. How much time are you spending going side to side? How much time are you spending rotating? Because obviously we're very static when we run. What does your day look like? Are you quite sedentary? Are you doing a desk job? I mean, I know my husband for a period, he was working a desk job and then he was an ultra-marathoner in his spare time. And that was his 2 ends of the spectrum. He was either running long distance or he was sat at his desk. And you can guess how that ended for him. And I'm his wife and I'm a Pilates instructor. So, he doesn't listen. So look at your day, look at your weeks, look at your training plan, look at your movement as a whole. And are you getting a good amount of variety? So my top tips, try and get in some lateral movement. Try and get in some side strength, some side movement. And I'll move on to that in a second. Try and get in some rotation. We don't do a lot of that. Even with cars now we have cameras on our cars, so we're not even rotating to look behind us. Taking those things out of your day, it seems really time-saving, really effective, but actually it's narrowing down your movements. It's narrowing down everything. So try and think about adding it back in when you can. Think about flexing and extending. Moving the spine in different ways like it was designed to do, rather than just staying static, like say if you're desk working or if you're running. And we'll do some of these in a second so we can try and see how we're feeling. And like I say, sideways movement, sideways strength, super important. Pilates is fantastic for this. We do a lot of lateral strength. It'll look different like I say, different classes look very different, but if you're doing it as a runner, you want to make sure that your Pilates sessions are getting in some good amount of lateral strength. And that's really important, okay? So we want to make sure that we are getting that lateral strength in because it feeds into our stability. So like I say, forwards and backwards motion as a runner, but ironically, the strength to stabilize comes from our lateral muscles. So we need to be challenging them outside of running. Obviously, that's going to have an impact on our biomechanics and our running economy. And let's say our study was earlier, 2018 showed that Pilates does increase trunk strength. So Pilates has got that. So top tips in terms of strength, get in your single leg strength. We are on one leg the entire time, and you'd be surprised the number of runners that have really poor single leg strength. So try and get in some single leg strength work. Like I say, lateral stuff, lower limb. Lower limb's a classic one. If you're doing Pilates already, how much foot, calf and ankle work are you doing? Because particularly as we get older, those foot, calf and ankle injuries tend to increase. Okay, and I'll come on to why in a moment, but trying to get in some foot, calf and ankle strength. Again, it helps with your proprioception and body awareness too, which also feeds into your stability. Making sure you get in a good amount of core strength. And as a runner, our core strength should look like, again, lateral. Making sure we get in some lateral core strength because that feeds into our overall stability. Making sure we get in multi-limb. So studies have shown that as athletes, we benefit much more when we're using multiple limbs. So you probably will have heard this, how crunches aren't the best for us as runners. They're not the best because you're just flexing your spine. That's one joint, several if you think about the vertebrae, but it's basically one joint moving. That's not mimicking in any functional way what we do when we're running, when we're moving both arms and both legs. So getting multi-limb movement and getting standing core strength. The number of classes I see still for runners where they're doing a lot of mat-based work. There's nothing wrong with mat-based strength. I use it myself. You can get in a good amount of work in, but you also need to get up off the floor. It changes the way your body moves. It changes your proprioception or your body awareness. It changes how you coordinate your muscles, and it changes the way you use your motor control. So we need to get that practice in outside of running. And that moves us on quite nicely to stability and balance. I think it's one of the key things as runners that we need to be getting. So have a look at your Pilates sessions. Are you getting in a good amount of standing balance work? Let's say when we're running, we're hopping from one leg to another. So if you haven't got that ability to stabilize really well on one leg, that's going to directly impact your running economy, your biomechanics. Now, I really like this study on shoulders. I think the best analogy for this, or the best way I understood it, was imagine standing on a paddleboard in the middle of a lake and trying to throw a ball. I mean, I don't think I can even stand up on a paddleboard, but imagine it, if you will, trying to throw a ball while still on that paddleboard. I think you're going to really struggle to harness all of your strength and your power to throw that ball. If you compare that to being stood on dry land where you're really strong and stable, the power and the strength you're going to be able to use to throw that ball is going to really enhance. And the study on shoulders actually showed this quite nicely. So a 20% loss in trunk stability resulted in 80% loss of power through the shoulders and the arms. Now, if you think about that when we're running, where we're using our arms and our legs, all four limbs, to try and propel us forwards, if you've lost some trunk stability, you've lost a huge amount of your power. It doesn't matter how strong you are. You're not able to harness it in the same way if your stability isn't there. And stability doesn't equal strength, or other way around. Strength doesn't necessarily equal stability. Okay, stability is a skill. Strength is one part of it, but it's also involving things like coordination in terms of being able to coordinate all the stabilizing muscles in the body all at once. So you can have a really strong feet, calves and ankles, but if you've got no strength up above, you're going to be waving around like a flag. So it's the ability to coordinate all of your strength, all of your stabilizing muscles all in one go. It's things like motor control, so being able to coordinate, being able to control the muscles. We'll practice that in a minute when we do some standing balance work. And it's things like proprioception, so body awareness. So all of those things feed into your stability or your ability to stabilize. So it's not just strength-based. I think that's really encouraging because some people think that they have to be super strong to be stable. Yes, you need some strength, but you also need these other things as well. So things that we need to think about, I've said as well there, stability, I think this can really put people off when they do some standing work, and I don't want this to put you off later, is people think, oh, I can't do it, that's just not something I can do. It's a skill like anything else, and just like any skill, practice makes perfect. Those of you that drive, I think remember this, well, I've struggled to remember this far back, but I do remember mirror signal maneuver. Do you remember that, where you had to really think mirror signal maneuver? And then a couple of years down the line, you're doing it, you're not thinking about it. It's just automatic, it's muscle memory. Stability is exactly the same thing. You might start off and it's really challenging, but like I say to people, and this is God's honest truth, I'm not trying to encourage them, If you've got really bad stability now, you've got massive potential to improve your running. If your stability is not great now, there's a huge amount of power and drive you're leaving on the table. Yeah. So if you start to work on it, and it's a skill like anything else, you just practice it little and often. It's simple as that. Once you start to improve it, once it becomes muscle memory, you can pull that into your running form and it will make a massive difference. So things to think about: getting up off the floor. You know, if you're doing Pilates already, how much of your Pilates is down on a mat? Try to get up off the floor and do that standing work. Focus on single leg stability. So doing a lot of single leg balance, we'll practice in a moment. Being regular and consistent. I think people get put off thinking they've got to spend hours doing this. I would say start with 10 minutes, 3 to 4 times a week. Start there. It's 100% more effective than what you're doing at the moment, which is probably nothing. But it's actually, I know that's not true because I can see some of my Pilates runners members here, so I know you guys do stuff. But little and often, get consistent, get it sustainable, and vary your challenge. Yeah, this is brilliant, and this is how I encourage people to start. This is just balancing. Brushing your teeth, balancing on one leg, perfect place to start, but it's just balance. Stability is where you're moving your arms and your legs, similar to running. Obviously, you don't run like this. Maybe you do, if you're Phoebe from Friends. I can tell the age group then if anyone gets that reference. But yeah, vary how you're challenging your balance, because when you're out running, there's different terrain, there's different camber. You're not just stood on one leg. Yeah. So again, think about what we need as runners and then try and incorporate that into your training. Leads us on nicely to flexibility and mobility. Pilates, again, fantastic for this. Functional range of movement. I don't want it to sound too technical, so the easiest thing to think about is your knee. So most of us can pull our knee into a stretch. My muscles aren't doing anything here. My hand's just pulling me into it. There's a difference between that and then being able to bend your knee into a loaded position. So what you want as runners, and I think, to be honest, what we want as humans, is we want functional range of movement. I want to be able to move my limbs in a way that I can control all the movement. It's great if you can pull them into a position. It's even better if you can move them in and out of that position, because that's going to be much more functional as a runner and, I'd say, as a human being. The strength gains you can get from being more mobile. And again, I'm going to go with the squat. Squat's an easy one too. Imagine your quads. If you're doing a squat here because hip mobility, ankle mobility is a little bit not where you'd like it to be, the strength gains you're going to get are not the same as if you're able to go into a much deeper squat. And that's because if we think about how we build strength, is we stimulate the muscle fibers. So if you're doing a very small squat, you're not going to be stimulating as many muscle fibers as if you're dropping into a deeper squat. You're putting your muscles under more tension, under more load, you're stimulating more of the muscle fibers, your strength gains are going to improve. So think about that. Joint health. If we haven't got a good range of movement in our joints, then we're not able to lubricate them the same way, which means our joint health is compromised. So if you think about the joints, there's a fluid in the joints, the synovial fluid. It's sort of like the WD-40 of your joints. The way that gets in there, the way that's replenished is movement. So as we're moving our joints, that's when the synovial fluid gets flushed out, new stuff gets flushed in. That's how we heal, that's how we repair. If we're not moving our joint through its fullest range, then again, we're not able to lubricate that joint to the fullest. And if you think about running, again, all forwards and backwards. If you think about the hips, forwards and backwards, that's not all the hip can do. The hip can rotate. The hip can move in all sorts of other directions. The knee's pretty boring. The knee just flexes and bends. But shoulders, hips, they move in all different ways. So again, going back to that movement variety, moving your bodies in different ways, getting that full range of movement. And I'm sad to say, as we age, elasticity decreases. So elasticity in our fascia, in our ligaments, in our tendons, it starts to go down. So we need to work a little bit harder to maintain a good range of movement. Think use it or lose it. Sadly, as well as women, perimenopause, the gift that it is, keeps on giving. Elasticity also decreases a lot with perimenopause. Okay. And I'm actually a sad example of this. I ruptured my ACL skiing a few years ago thanks to perimenopause and the lack of elasticity. Do not recommend, like 1-star rating, don't do it. Keep your range of movement. Make sure you push into those movements that you find challenging. So top tips. What movement do you do at the moment? Similar to the variation, but what movement can your joints do? Let's say, think about each joint. What range have you got in each joint? So in your hips, I'm sure all of you can do this because we run. but how many of you are really feeling confident in terms of your rotation and your strength through that range of movement? So again, think about your movement, make sure you're getting lots of variety. And that moves us nicely onto rest and recovery. Now, I'm not going to lie, I think this is the secret weapon, underutilized secret weapon of runners in terms of avoiding or trying to reduce injuries. And I get it. If you're using running, like we talked about at the start, it's the way you get outside, it's the way you see your friends, it's the way you manage your mental health. If you start to get that little niggle and you think, oh, how am I feeling? Oh, but I still want to see my friends. I still want to get outside. I get it. I've done this many, many times. We ignore the niggle and we carry on running. And that is why, let's say, 80% of injuries are overuse injuries, because we are, let's say, highly repetitious movement, under high load, and we're not great as a whole on rest and recovery. Yeah, because we love running, because it's part of what we want to do. So if someone tells us to rest or reduce our load, we think, well, I've got that marathon coming up. It's really hard to juggle, and I get it. Pilates is fantastic for this. I really struggle to be still and to rest. So Pilates for me is a fantastic way to get that rest and recovery, to get all the things I need, like the joint movement, to lower the heart rate, lower the blood pressure. And it's really important, that rest and recovery, obviously for the injury, but also for training gains. You don't get your training gains while you're training, because your body is so busy trying to get you, I don't know, whether you're working on speed, whether you're working on endurance, your body is working hard. It's only when we come out of that fight or flight that we actually allow the body to switch and focus on more restorative functions, like muscle repair, cell repair, restoration, immunity. That's why we often get ill when we're training really hard, because when we're constantly in fight or flight, our body can't really focus on the immunity side, on boosting immunity, on fighting illness. So, like I say, rest and recovery, massively underutilized. I think as runners, we need to think of ways that we feel comfortable resting and recovering. Like I say, for me, Pilates, think about ways that you can do that. And it doesn't matter what that is, but try and think about ways of reducing physical and mental stress as well. Because remember, mental stress manifests physically. Mental stress manifests physically. That's what I'm trying to say. It's perimenopause, brain fog. Those of you that have it will totally understand. Find ways to manage your stress levels, yeah, because if we've got a very busy lifestyle outside of running, very hectic, very demanding, and then you're running, and then you're not actively managing your load or your mental stress, you're going to be constantly in fight or flight. You're going to be constantly tired, constantly immunosuppressed, constantly at risk of higher risk of injuries, because the body just can't fight on all fronts. Yeah, so training load's a really important one. If we think about training, we want to put the body under just enough stress that we get those positive adaptations. So we put the body under stress, it goes, oh my God, I can't cope, I'm going to adapt so that next time I'm prepared for this. But what happens with training overload is we put the body under a little bit too much stress, the body can't make those positive adaptations, and that could be for a number of reasons. It could be that we're a little bit unwell. It could be that we're not eating so well. It could be that we're not getting quality sleep. It could be we're not hydrating well. It doesn't matter the reason. If the body hasn't got what it needs to make those positive adaptations and you're still putting it under stress because you're still training, that's when your risk of injury is through the roof. Yeah, so keeping an eye on your body, and this is another reason it's not up here, it's why I love Pilates, and I have heard this from members, the longer you do it, the better your proprioception and your body awareness becomes. And therefore, you're more in tune. You start to feel that niggle a little bit earlier. So maybe you start to do a little bit more mobility and recovery. You start to catch things a little bit earlier than normal. And actually, my husband and I were listening to a podcast with Eliud Kipchoge on the way up yesterday. And it was one of the things he said. The guy asked him, why you've never had injuries? And he's like, I really listen to my body. I really listen, and I take on what it's telling me. So if it's telling me that I'm tired and I've got a little bit of a niggle, I'm on it. I'm doing him a disservice with how I'm describing it. But basically, that's what he was saying. I'm really in tune with my body and I don't ignore it. And Pilates is fantastic for building that proprioception and that body awareness. So yeah, top tips. Please prioritize rest and recovery. Think about ways to manage actively your mental and physical health. One thing I will say is runners are often really great at thinking about their physical health, but I think actually this is as a general population I found is, and I was guilty of it myself, we don't actively manage our mental health. We see it as something we just have or don't have. And I think we need to think of it as something we have to do. Even if our mental health is good, it's something we still need to work on. So things to consider. There are a huge variety of Pilates classes out there. Try lots of different ones, see how you get on. In person versus on demand, whatever works for you, whatever can get you consistent. And are you ready to try a few exercises? Well, while you're thinking about it, stand up. And then you can tell me afterwards whether you want. So with that, we're going to take our arms out in front. We're going to try very hard not to knock out our neighbour unless they've annoyed you. And we're going to do a bit of movement variety to start. So we're going to take the arm up past the ear. And then we're going to turn around and try and follow it with our eyes as it goes behind you. And then it comes back down past your bottom and back. And then do the same the other side. Up past your ear, round behind you, and back. Just do a couple to each side. How close to your ear can you get your arm? How much rotation have you got through your upper body? And this is what I said about listening and tuning in. If you're finding that arm coming up towards your ear is tricky, maybe you're thinking about adding in some more arm movement to your day, more shoulder rotation. If it's that rotation behind you that's tricky, try to add in more rotation to your day. So listen to your body. It's telling you things all the time. When you're ready, come back to the center. Now we're going to have to turn to the side for this, otherwise you really are going to knock out your neighbour. Because what we're going to do is we're going to put our hands behind our head. Okay? Now you're going to make sure you push your elbows back as far as they will go. So push back, 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 back. How does that feel? Does that feel tight? Does that feel easy? Listen to your body. Now push your head back into your hands. Still thinking about keeping the back of the head nice and tall. Lovely. Now you're going to squeeze your bottom, push your hips forward and lift your chest to the ceiling. How does that feel when you extend your back? Come back upright. Do that a couple more times. Push the elbows back, lift the chest, and return. Again, do it a couple of times, see how it feels. Is the movement easy? Is it hard? Come back to center and then see if you can go side to side. Can you take your elbows if you're trying to reach it towards the floor? And then come back to the center and go the other way. How does that feel? That lateral flexion through the spine. Does it feel comfortable? Does it feel tricky? How many people are struggling with their hands to interlace behind their head? Come back to center. I'll let you release. Let it go. Shake it off. Yeah, so varying your movement, see how it feels. We're not done yet. Everyone's like, oh, done. No. Panic not. We're going to think about that piece of string pulling you up because we're going to do a bit of balance. I want you to think about headlights attached to your hip bones, so they're knobbly bit at the front of your hips. I want you for this little section to try and keep those headlights as level as you can. So I find it easy to put my fingertips on there. It's a feedback thing, but some of you might want to have hands out. It doesn't matter, but don't think that you have to have your hands like I have. You're going to do a little march on the spot. You're going to try and bring your knees up as high as possible without your headlights going squiffy. Okay? So just march on the spot. And then I want you to pause on one side. How's the balance looking? So sorry, I looked at you just as you did that. I'm so sorry. Stretch legs. See how does it feel on the other side? Now, it might feel easier or harder on one side than the other. How does the balance feel? Should we add in a bit of stability? So you bring your arms back in front. We're going to combine two moves. Okay, this is what I love about Pilates. You can do it all in one. So we're going to get movement variety, mobility, and balance. You're going to bring your knee up, and then you're going to try and rotate towards it. Whoop. And then you're going to do the same the other side. Bring the knee up. And then you're going to rotate towards it. And how does that feel? Do a couple more each side. See if you can work out if you've got a weaker side or a stronger side. I'm going to take a quick look. Everyone panics. Think about that piece of string pulling you up as you do this. Help keep you nice and engaged to your center. Twist around as far as you can. It's looking good. It could be worse. Good. Come back to center. Let's do a little bit of hinging. So let's vary that movement again. You're going to bring your knee up in front of you. I'll let you pick which side because you'll naturally go for your stronger side. So hopefully it'll be easy to start. And you're going to hinge forward. Now, if you can't go too far behind you because you're going to kick something, then just leave your leg underneath you. But hinge and then come back up. And again, hinge. And where do you feel this? Are you feeling a pull down the back of the leg into your hamstrings? Is it your back? Is it your feet and your ankles that are feeling it? When you're ready, switch sides. Do the same thing on the other side. Little hinge. And return. How easy are you finding it to keep your weight on that balancing leg? How smooth. So what we're aiming for with these is smooth moves. So ideally, you want to be moving nice and slow. Now that can be slow to start, but as you get stronger, as your balance and your proprioception improves, you want to start to challenge with a little bit of speed. But you want smoothness. You don't want to be falling around. So what I'd say is start a little bit easier. Build the proprioception, the motor control with a nice, easy move, and then start to make it more challenging. Don't be tempted, as we all are with runners. You see someone doing it like this, you're like, yep, that's how I'm doing it. No, go back to basics. Nail the foundations and then build from there. Last little one to finish. You can do a little bit of feet, calves, and ankles. So try and spread your toes within your shoes. Now, ideally, you'd do this without shoes on. Yeah, without shoes, without socks. Try and spend as much time, I would say, at home. It's a really easy way to build your foot and ankle strength is to not wear shoes and socks at home. So spread your toes out, and then we're just going to do some heel lifts. So you're going to go straight up and then slowly back down. Slow back down, that always catches people up. So up, slow down. How does that feel? Does that feel easy? Are your ankles rolling out? What's the strength like there? Now, if you're finding that's enough, then stay with that. Otherwise, come up onto your toes, see if you can bend into your knees. Keeping your heels up. And then coming back up. And again, come down, low as you can get. How's that feel? Is it the bend in the knees that's challenging? Is it keeping your feet up? There's no judgment here. It's just you for yourself. What are you finding hardest? Because remember, when we're running, we've got quite a lot of foot and ankle work going on, particularly if you're a trail runner. So that strength for your feet and ankles is really important, that stability. It'll feed up to everything up above. Lovely. There's actually one more I wanted to do, and this is probably the most challenging, and I forgot about it, but I'm going to do it. Come onto one leg. We're going to do a single leg squat. It's a classic way. Everyone's like, oh no. If you've ever been to a physio, they'll get you doing single leg squats. Everyone's like, I can't. Come into your squat. Right. Now your cue here is try and think about that piece of string. So you're nice and tall through your center. You've got your balance. You're going to try and bend your knee. Don't try and get your chest to the floor. Try and bend your knee as much as you can. How much control have you got? How low can you go before you lose that control? And then slowly back up. Good. Do two more like that. Let's have a look. Pretty good. Nice. Good. When you're ready, switch sides. See if now you probably would have gone for your stronger side first, so don't be disheartened if this side feels a little more challenging. Good. Low and then back up. Do a couple more. How low can you go? Good. And it's the control, talking about that range of movement, talking about that control. How much control have you got in those deeper depths? You've been really good sports. You can sit down whenever you want to. Everyone's like, oh, my God. Thank you so much for helping me out there. I could have gone either way with a number of people. Some mat-based options. Obviously, not everything needs to be standing. Here's some mat-based options if you want to think about them. Lunges, all that kind of thing. All the obvious ones. When's the best time to do Pilates? All the time, anytime. If you follow me on social media, you'll see a lot of me in my kitchen with my cat. The cat's not here. I've been asked already several times. He's not here. I'm really sorry. Natalie, who organises the show, did say she'd get him a VIP ticket, but, because he's that popular. Any way you can. You don't need to be doing tons. Movement is your medicine, yeah? Prevention rather than cure. Start small and get consistent. With Pilates, when people are first starting, I always say to them that they always start really keen and they want to do a couple of hours a week. I'm like, no. Ease yourself in. 10 minutes, 3 to 4 times a week makes a massive difference if you're consistent with it. Sustainable habits rather than all or nothing kind of, what am I trying to say? Consistency over intensity. There we go. Got there in the end. Brain fog. 10 minutes is a long time when you're focused. Anyone who does one of my tasting sessions this weekend, particularly the single leg one, you'll realize 10 minutes is a long time. Progress over perfection. Yeah, just trying to get consistent, trying to add it into your routine as frequently as possible. If you didn't manage to pre-book any sessions this weekend, I know they all sold out. Please do come to the stand. We'll try and fit you in. A lot of people book and then can't get there, so please come to the stand. We're literally over there. We're running sessions over the whole weekend. If you can't get there or you don't feel comfortable doing it in front of everyone else, there's a QR code there. I'll send them out to you in on demand. So if you've pre-booked a session, you'll automatically get emailed them. But if you want to try them, there's a foot, calf and ankle one, there's a core one, there's a mobility one, there's a rest and recovery one, and there's a single leg one. So there's 5 different sessions. I can't really remember that. Very proud of myself. If you're a member, don't forget we're doing a photo at 1:45. But other than that, thank you so much for taking part. I really appreciate it, and have a great show. Thank you very much.